What is up, RotoBallers? This is Pierre, the Roto Chef. I'm here to help you with some more lineup advice, talking about wide receivers for week 8. So I'll run down some of my favorite must-start and also must-sit players, give you 3 to start, 2 to sit. Now, I'm going to talk about guys who aren't the obvious picks. Some of these players don't need mentioning. You're going to start them no matter what the matchup is. If they're healthy, you're playing them. But then there's those guys that are kind of that wide receiver 3 flex kind of bubble. You're not quite sure what to do with them. So I'll tell you where I'm going this week. Let's start with a wide receiver that is normally a start, but coming off a low week. Well, everybody in Houston's coming off a down week. Look, Nico Collins, the rookie, led that team with 28 yards receiving last week. Obviously, that's a problem. And then Davis Mills at quarterback, that has been a problem. But here's double good news. So first of all, Tyrod Taylor is back. He's been practicing. Looks like he is going to start, most likely, unless something happens late in the week or before game time. Tyrod Taylor back at quarterback. That helps the whole offense. And of course, it helps Cook as the not only the main target, but also a guy who can go deep and catch a lot of passes, because there's just not a lot of other options on this offense. He was, after the first 5 weeks of the season, leading the league among all receivers in target share. He's down to just third now. Anyways, I know it's a down week he's coming off of, and he hasn't really been productive lately. But again, Taylor's going to give this team a shot in the arm. And then you won't believe number 2. The other thing that's good news for him is they're playing the Rams, which doesn't sound like good news. Of course, one of the best pass defenses around. But it is good because game script will dictate they will pass the ball a ton. This team is trying to control the ball, trying to limit the other team's ability to actually score and be on the field, because that's pretty much all they're hoping for at this point. Not going to happen with the Rams. Obviously, the Texans are going to have to pass to catch up this whole time. And also, I want to just say that I'm not worried about all the noise. The whole thing this week with Mark Ingram getting traded kind of out of nowhere. Brandin Cooks took to social media. He wasn't too happy about it, to say the least. So now there's people talking about, does he want out? He's going to get traded. He can't just get traded because it's not his choice. He might want out, but he's there, right? And he's there and he's playing. So if he's on the field, you've got to think, number one, this might serve as motivation for him, right? I would think he'd want to play his heart out, but also going against the Rams, this is one of his former teams. I don't think he's just going to go out there and let down. So I'm not worried about Cooks this week. I think he'll be fine. In fact, I think he'll have a big jump in usage again. So put Brandin Cooks back in your lineup. Don't worry about it. Hey, with Mark Ingram gone, maybe they will actually have to pass the ball even more now because, well, it's not like they had a running game to begin with. Anyways, going on to another guy that now is back, and that's Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. Finally, looks like he's going to return, and he could have gone last week. Just remember, they had a short turnaround with a Thursday game, and so they decided to play it safe. And so he actually should be 100% at this point because, again, he could have played. It was close for him playing last week, but he's fine. He'll get his full workload. You don't have to worry about him being on a limited snap count or anything like that. And going against a team that does give up the second most fantasy points per game to wide receiver, and that is Washington. I know some people are concerned about this offense as a whole, especially talking about Teddy Bridgewater, still the quarterback. Yes, he's still the quarterback. There's no debate there. Look, it's not all Teddy B's fault. I know he hasn't been great. Obviously, he's throwing some picks. That's hurting them. He's still completing 70% of his passes on the season. All right, he's been efficient. No, he's never going to be the most exciting, but you know what? He can get the ball to his wide receivers. You've seen Courtland Sutton have a couple of monster games. Jeudy was looking good in the very beginning of the season before, of course, he got hurt and has been out. So I think there's nothing to worry about here with Jeudy. And in fact, him being back should give this whole offense a shot in the arm, maybe what it needs. So you got Jeudy. I say put him right back in your lineup. And then one more must start here. I like Devonta Smith. Again, somebody coming off of a down game. This Eagles offense, we just don't know what to get from them each and every week. Jalen Hurts, yeah, he's consistent because he can run the ball. He's always got the ball in his hands. Getting it to Smith, I know it's not always happening, but it's not like Smith is doing absolutely nothing. He had a modest performance last week. He hasn't had those big games like he did a couple earlier in the season, but he's still getting targeted, not only the most on this team, but he's getting targeted a good amount. 9 last week. He's going to get targeted, of course, a ton this week, and in going against Detroit, you have to love the matchup. Detroit hasn't allowed fewer than 147 yards to wide receivers in a game yet, and Eagles, one of those teams that just don't have a lot of secondary options. It's not like somebody else is stealing targets from Smith. It's just a matter of the team not having the ball often enough in their hands. I don't think it's anything about Miles Sanders in the running game because they didn't really have much of a running game to begin with. So it's really just a matter of the matchup being favorable, and Smith is kind of due for another one of those big games. I think it happens this week. Not going to happen for T. Higgins. Look, I will just say that I was kind of wrong on this. I had Higgins pegged for the wide receiver 1 in Cincinnati. Didn't really think Jamar Chase would shine, especially this early and this much. I think we're all a little surprised by how well he's been doing. So Higgins, on the other hand, it's not about lack of opportunity. The Bengals are still throwing the ball a fair amount, and Higgins getting targeted a ton. I think it was 15 targets last week. He's getting looks, but here's the problem. He's starting to look a little bit Juju Smith-Schuster-like in the sense that he's having a really low yard per target average. Right now, 6 yards per target. That is not cutting it. If you think about it, 10 times, even if you get 10 targets, which is a pretty good amount for a receiver, it's getting you 60 yards. That's not going to do it in fantasy. It's not like he's reaching the end zone multiple times. So he's just not getting the job done. Even in PPR leagues, there is a floor there. But again, there's no ceiling. Again, kind of like Juju, what we've seen, if you're always hovering around the line of scrimmage, you're not making those big plays downfield. It's Chase who's doing that. So Higgins is just not producing as expected. And you'd think going against the Jets, it's a great matchup. It is actually not a good matchup because the Jets are limiting receiver production, not because they have shutdown corners, but because their run defense is that bad, right? The Bengals just really won't need to pass the ball that much. So that volume that Higgins really depends on, it's not going to be there. Okay, no receivers have really gone off against the Jets, on multiple occasions. It's just a matter of the matchup not favoring the receivers in this game. And Higgins, it really hasn't been much of an asset. So you can safely sit him in favor of somebody else with more upside. Especially this week, there's really not that many teams on bye, just 2. So you should have enough other options. And then the last guy, just don't like, and look, this really doesn't have to do with the matchup because Indy on paper is a good matchup. They're a bottom 10 fantasy defense in terms of points per game allowed to wide receivers, but it doesn't matter in Julio's case because he has done nothing all year except for one game against Seattle. We went over 100 yards, and surprise, surprise, he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Not in the end zone once as a member of the Titans, and ever since that one big game against Seattle, he's not even going over 60 yards in the game. He's doing very little. Of course, he's not even on the field for a full share. He's got the same amount of snaps as guys like Marcus Johnson because we know we have to keep his hamstring healthy. So when you're barely on the field and you're not scoring touchdowns, you're not cutting it for fantasy standards. And he's already played the Colts once before. A couple weeks ago, he had 47 yards and 3 catches. That's pretty much what you should expect with Julio. And if that's what you're going for, great. You know what? Go ahead and start him and see what happens. If you want somebody who actually has a chance to help you win, I'd say you can look elsewhere. And sadly, I think that might be the case all season long with Julio Jones. All right. Hope this helps. That is some of the guys that I think you should start to sit in week 8. You know, of course, as always, keep it locked on RotoBaller. Check out our updated rankings all weekend long. And good luck in week 8.